I started out in natural history long time ago, working in green tourism with an old friend and colleague called Trevor Beer. And he was our local naturalist and artist, and he was an environmental journalist as well. And when I was at school, I won a North Devon Conservation Award for a project that I was doing at a secondary school, and he awarded me the prize. And then I did work experience with him at college, and then when I left college I found, because I'd done my A-levels, there wasn't anything for me to go on to, so I went into green tourism, and we worked together for a company away, and people from all walks of life would come for a holiday for the weekend to North Devon, and we would take them out for the whole weekend and show them the wildlife, the birds and the flowers, and there'd be little stories and bits of folklore, you know, as well behind everything. And it started out like that, and we did that for many years. And then Trevor became poorly in his back, so I led and we reversed. I led and he picked up the rear, as it were, and we did that, and eventually I think the company went bust, and then we worked for another company. But from that I set up my business Naturama, and wrote children's books about wildlife, and wrote for adults as well in magazines, and started illustrating. I wouldn't have illustrated if he hadn't have encouraged me. It was him that really encouraged me to illustrate my first book, because I asked him to do it and he said, "You can do this." I said, "No." He said, "Yes, you can." So it started like that, really. He's very missed. Yeah, but yeah, he's no longer with us, unfortunately.
Yeah, shame. It's really helpful early on to have a bit of a mentor or somebody who will push you in a certain direction, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So did you have any particular interest in the natural world, or it was illustrating and writing that was your passion?
I was fascinated by nature always. I think living in North Devon, in an area where you have beaches close to you, you have the moorland, you have woodlands, everything is here. The quality of life here is very good. If you're looking for big money and big jobs, then it's not the place to be. But for me, it's home, and this is where my roots are. Um, so I think it's very difficult to live here and not be interested.
If you open your eyes to nature, I think that's the case anywhere, isn't it? I mean, we have swifts and sparrows whose entire existence depends on human habitation for their own nesting. So even in cities, you know, add in the pigeons. Okay, it's mostly birds, admittedly, but you know they're everywhere. Fortunately, for our mental health, so we take them for granted, but it's really delightful to be able to observe such things wherever you are, pretty well.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head too when you said about mental health. I think we're living in such a fast pace today. Years ago, we'd write a letter. If you replied within the week, that was perfectly acceptable. Today, it's immediate. It's emails. You've got to do. And I think that we need our green spaces. And I don't really think there's any excuse why houses, and I know we've got to have them, but I don't see why they can't build them with all, you know, like the Swift bricks and little places for bats, because they won't interfere with anything. It's sectioned off, and there's no excuse to not think about all of these things and have green spaces. And we've got to think about the future and our quality of life in terms of our health. It absolutely depends on it. And environmentally, the one thing that really annoys me is that we don't, we talk about networking with businesses and things like that, but you don't see the big businesses really doing that to great effect. And the water companies, it all went privatised and it all went upside down from there. We've got engineers and scientists, I'm sure, that could make it possible for all the water to go back into the seas and the rivers clean. There's no excuse for it to go back dirty, and that infuriates me, especially with how much money we pay every month for our water bills. I don't think it's acceptable, and I can't help but think, where is the HSE in all of this? You know, they come down on public health and safety. Where are they with all of this? And people get really ill. Um, so I want to do something on that. but I'm not quite sure where I am. I think I've got a beginning. It's like writing, isn't it? You need your beginning and your middle and your end, and once you've got a project together, then so long as I've got my first paragraph, I'm all right. I'm away.
If you're like most writers, including myself, you'll do anything other than actually write. You'll research, you'll map out an outline, you'll go out and observe, you'll think, oh, which publication can I aim this at? You'll ask other people's advice, you'll make a cup of tea, anything other than write. Do you find the same thing?
Still not done it. Yeah, I had a squirrel for years, and I'm desperate to write her little story, and I've still not done it. And the pages are fading. My journals are fading, the ink, and I thought if I don't do it soon. But you're right. Yeah.
So you do have to have a certain motivation to get on and do things, and and as writers, it's a very oftentimes it's a very lonely pursuit, isn't it? And that's why we find having our society and an exchange of ideas and success stories between members is a very helpful thing to do sometimes.
Yes. Oh, that's lovely.
There's something else about you that fascinates me as well, because you very kindly sent me 2 CVs. And it seems to me that you're like 2 people. You
Yeah.
exist in
That's
a
right.
in a somewhat uninspiring corporate mode on one side, where your first word in your work history is unemployed, and then in the secondary mode you have a beautifully illustrated resume, which is not even a CV, which is just full of passion about wildlife and the natural world. So tell us a bit about these 2 sides to your character.
The corporate side is to pay the bills. So I've got to earn enough money to pay my bills, unfortunately. So I'm a legal secretary now in the conveyancing department for a firm of solicitors. My business ran for about 20 years, and then I had to go up to work part-time. And then I decided it was actually costing more to keep running, so I've let it go with a view to possibly bringing it back at some point, perhaps when I officially retire, but I've got a little way to go yet. So it's still a hobby, I'm not letting it completely go. So the books and the illustration and all of that side of it, it's still there. I'm still illustrating for people. I still illustrate for Exmoor magazine, and I'll have done that for 20 years in about 3 years' time, I think. So it's a long time, and I really enjoy it. That's evolved. That started out as a 2-spread article looking at nature, and then it became, I had my little dog that everybody liked. Willow's actually Trevor's dog, but I used to walk him and things as well, so he was our little family, as it were. And so I used to do it from the perspective of a dog looking at things, because they're lower down and they can see things. And I did that for a while, and then the market's evolved again, and my editor said, could you do something for younger children, go younger again, and do a nature quiz? So the whole thing is just a 1-page illustration now of a location on Exmoor, and within that there'll be wildlife, and then there'll be a few questions so that nans and mums and dads and grandpas can sit with their little ones and say, where was this butterfly, and can you recognise this species? And there's just a few little questions, but it makes them look, and that's quite fun to do. So that's that side of it, still ticking along in the background, but yeah, I do have to go out to work. I'm not that good.
Well, it's you obviously managed to balance your conflicting requirements in that sense. Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons we run this podcast, and some others, I think you're aware that we're involved as well, running podcasts for the Global Bird Fair, which is a big conservation event held in Rutland, and actually it's next weekend. And that gives us the opportunity of interacting with a lot of people whose passion is wildlife in all senses. It's called a bird fair, but it's a big conservation event generally. And it's really fascinating to just have that common interest with so many different people. And running a podcast is, of course, the current era's way of getting stuff out there to an audience. We do have members who do successfully write books and sell articles and publish articles and teach other people to do the same kind of thing. But use of video seems to have become a major thing in a lot of people's lives.
I must come to the Rutland Bedford. I've never been. I'd love to go. I can't come next weekend because I'm at the Gilbert White Centre with the BNA. Uh, I'm the British Naturalists Association's youth officer currently. Been doing that for a long, long time. Uh, but yes, they have an annual a get together, like a weekend of field trips and things, and I was already committed, unfortunately.
So, do you have projects on the horizon to sort of balance your work life with natural history?
I do. I've got a few things in the pipeline that I want to get moving. One is the water project that I want to stir up, if I can, because I don't understand why we're not evolved. Well, we haven't evolved, you know, far more than we have on that. Because I don't think it's acceptable, and I think a lot of people feel like that as well. Um, I'm still illustrating. I've just got one's going to go to Queensland. I have family in Australia. They emigrated, so a lot of my family live out there. And I have an aunt who's a writer, a different genre altogether. And she had a friend. I've been drawing pets, been drawing their dogs, and my auntie's friend wanted the original illustration, so I'm going to ship that across this week. And I am going to look at writing the story of Grey, my little squirrel. Yeah, it's a bit controversial because she was a grey squirrel, but the thing was she was blind or partially sighted, and because she was a little girl, she imprinted on me. You can't really look after the boy squirrels in quite the same way. They're too full of testosterone, and I just have a little one of those as well that was rescued because living on the edge of a woodland. The animals get to know you. We used to have badgers coming in the garden, and my little squirrel would watch the wild squirrels, and the wild squirrels would watch her, and they'd copy each other. If I put monkey nuts out, they'd be like, "Oh, what's this?" And then they'd watch her doing one, and then they would do one. So it was quite sweet. But yes, we're meant to be licensed for squirrels, and I was going to get a license for my little boy. But was brain damaged, so he couldn't climb up, and I kept saying, "Oh, come and see him, and you'll understand why. You know, he's not going to get out anywhere. I don't need all this caging and things. He just goes along like this." And anyway, he had another bleed on the brain and passed away, unfortunately. So I never got my license finished for him. And I didn't know I needed one for Grey, but I had her about 20 years, and she didn't go anywhere. She just stayed with me. She'd sit on my lap and have a story, and then the dog would come in, and then the cat would come in, and they'd all sit together and have their nighttime story before they went to bed. And that's how my first children's books began. Oh, goodness me. I don't think I have a favourite species. I think being older, you know, sort of having got to sort of 52, I sit in the woods and the garden, and I listen to the birds and I watch animals, and I think for me it's almost a spiritual thing to kind of connect with nature. It's a very peaceful thing, and you have to remember that they're all little souls out there, and they're vulnerable, and I think that's humbling. I think we're very privileged to be in the position that we are, and it's a shame, I think, that we have so much influence. I think we could have a much better influence, you know, to be more helpful, I think, to the natural world and the natural balance of things.
I had an encounter with a nest of blackbirds a week or so back, and I should have left it another month, but I was doing some hedge trimming, and I suddenly noticed I'd disturbed a nest, and it had one hatched baby and a couple of eggs. So I very quickly moved away and left them in peace. And just yesterday I noticed that they've all grown up and fledged and gone. So, but then the male stands up on top of of a nearby roof, screaming the blackbird alarm call to keep the magpies away from presumably wherever the babies are still hiding. So I find it a bit disappointing. It's nice to be able to think that you can interpret the communication of a non-human species, but I find it disappointing that they are so afraid of Homo sapiens that they don't usually come close, do they, apart from
No.
occurrences like your squirrel and like robins, but it's rare.
Yes, yeah, it is rare. Yeah, I've got my garden. Uh, my family will say otherwise, but I think it's lovely. It's half mown, so I've got half is for me, and then the other side is all wild grasses, and they're really beautiful when they flower. It's just a strip, but the little moss and things that I get in there are quite lovely. And I have a hedgehog. She comes in. My neighbours have agreed a hedgehog highway, so that they can move between. They've sort of dug things under the fence so that they can get underneath and get enough food. And there's a hedge at the back, and then beyond that are more gardens, and then there's the next sort of houses. So for a wild animal, or your cats, I've got cats as well, it's quite a nice space, and quite peaceful to sit out there, full of birds and little sparrows and all sorts of things. And a sparrowhawk comes in. That's always shocks me when because they come out of nowhere. They go, oh, and then he looks at me like this, and they've got that really hawky look, and you think, oh, quite close sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it is a delight, isn't it? And encouraging wildlife into a garden is not that hard. A little bit of water and plenty of shrubs and leaving it alone and let nature do its work seems to be the thing.
And especially water at ground levels. A lot of hedgehogs are really struggling, especially in these heat waves that we're having, to get enough to drink. So I've got water at ground level and several bird baths, and keeping it all. I do feed my birds, but it's imperative to keep them really scrub clean, because of the problems with the bacteria that are spreading and causing all these issues with birds today. But yes, so long as everything is clean, I don't use feeders because they're so difficult to clean. I just think it's not worth it. I just have an old-fashioned bird table that I can scrub, and my bird baths I can scrub, and just keep everything clean for them, and they seem to do all right. And it's just nice sitting outside, just listening to the birds, not having any telly on, just to
No,
sit
absolutely.
and say, oh, I'm not at work
You
anymore.
don't need artificial assistance
Yeah.
when you've got nature to entertain you.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no, I relate to that. So coming back to water briefly, I met a chap online who claimed to be a bit of a dowser, spiritualist, and all the rest of it, who explained that under present circumstances in the world, water is disappearing. It's retreating underground because of all of the stupid things that humans have been doing.
Yeah.
And that kind of resonated with me. There's so many things we depend on for water, along with our wildlife, and yet it's getting harder and harder to get pure, clean water in the place and time we need it. So there is something
Yeah.
going on there, isn't there?
Absolutely. I've noticed, I don't know what it's like where you are with the weather and everything. It's so humid. So you have rain, but then the next day, even if it's not blazing sun, it's so humid. You can feel the water evaporating, and you get really dehydrated. I want you to keep drinking, going to work and things, and yeah, that humidity is something I'm not quite used to. I think it's something with climate change and everything.
I lived for a long time in tropical Africa, so this is much more like I found in
Yeah.
Africa. It's not typical of Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, well, it's been lovely talking to you. One final question that I'm sure everybody has to ask you. Tell us a bit about your name, Endymion.
I actually changed it by deed poll, when I was 18. The true reason behind that is that my parents divorced as a teenager. Mum went back to her maiden name. I didn't want to have to choose between them, so I picked my own name, which is why I'm called Beer after Trevor Beer, because I lived with his family for a long time, because Mum moved to a village. There was one bus in that village that came through to Barnstaple on a Friday, and it was pretty much an all-day event to come into Barnstaple and do your shopping, and then at 4 o'clock go back to the little village in Merton near Oakhampton. So it was impossible, and I didn't have any money. When you're a student, you don't have any money, do you? I didn't have a car, so I moved back to Barnstaple, which was where I was born anyway, and lived with Trevor and Rosemary, his wife, and son Robin, for a long time when we were working together, because it was just easier. So I think beer was in my head, and it sort of made me part of their family too. I think it caused a bit of offence with my family, but I didn't expect that. I thought I was being diplomatic. So Endymion is from Bluebell. It's Endymion non-scriptus, or it used to be. They've changed it again to Hyacinthioides, I think. But my favourite flower is the English bluebell. So I chose that for writing pseudonym because I think my friend, when I was doing work experience, he said, come on, you write my column for this week, which was in the North Devon Gazette. So I wrote the column in my old name, and then I'd noticed something with the British Naturalist Association, because Professor David Bellamy was the president, and I said, this is funny, you know, he's our president, and at that time he was. There's nothing in here about plants. I'd love for him to write, you know. So Trevor mentioned it, and they turned around and he said, well, will you do something? I can't do anything. I was 18. I thought, I can't do it. And they said, yeah, go on, have a go. And I ended up with my first little column in Countryside magazine, which was just plant profile, and they were just really just snippety bits. And then so I decided I was going to have a pseudonym as well. So it's a bit of a, yeah. That's how it came about.
Well, at least there is a story behind it. I guess there must have been. How nice is that? Well, on that happy note, then, let me thank you for your time this morning, and I look forward to putting this together and publishing and distributing it a little bit more widely, and wish you well in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. All the very best.